Have you ever felt it? That strange, creeping sense of isolation that comes not from being alone, but from thinking too much. The feeling that the deeper you understand the world, the less the world seems to understand you. If you've ever felt like you're speaking a different language in a crowded room, I want you to know something. You're not imagining it. Society has a long, dark history of fearing deep thinkers, not because they're wrong, but because they see the things the rest of us are trained to ignore. History is littered with the evidence. From Socrates in ancient Athens to Nietzsche in modern Europe, from Galileo staring at the stars to Tesla dreaming of a new world, the most brilliant minds have consistently been ridiculed, silenced, or cast aside, not for a lack of intelligence, but because their very presence made people uncomfortable. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most brutally honest philosophers, went so far as to say that a sharp intellect wasn't a gift, but a curse. One that condemns those who see the world too clearly to a life of solitude. But why? Why does society push back so hard against those who dare to think differently? The answer isn't just about ideas, it's buried deep within our own psychology. Think about it this way. When you stand next to someone who is incredibly physically strong, you don't automatically feel weak. You might admire their discipline. When you meet someone who is wealthy, you might feel a pang of envy, but you don't feel personally attacked by their success. But when you encounter someone who is intellectually on another level, something strange and uncomfortable happens. Psychologists call it the mirror effect. A deep thinker doesn't just share new information, their mind acts like a mirror, reflecting back the intellectual limitations and unexamined beliefs of everyone around them. And most people cannot stand to look in that mirror. The simple, quiet presence of someone who thinks deeply can make others feel insecure, inadequate, even threatened, without a single word being spoken. So why does intelligence, more than any other quality, trigger this deep-seated discomfort? When we see physical strength, we see an external quality. We can admire it from a distance. Wealth, beauty, these are things people possess, but they don't necessarily challenge the core of who we believe we are. Intelligence is different. Intelligence is internal. It's tied directly to our identity. We define ourselves by our thoughts, our beliefs, our understanding of the universe. So when someone comes along who thinks on a deeper plane, who questions the very things we accept as truth, it doesn't feel like a debate. It feels like a personal attack on our sense of self. And so, instead of admiring that intelligence, many people subconsciously resist it. Not because the deep thinker is arrogant, but because their existence forces an uncomfortable confrontation with one's own limits. And the human ego will do almost anything to protect itself from that feeling. Just take a moment and think about your own life. Have you ever tried to bring up a complex, nuanced idea in a casual conversation, only to be met with blank stares or a sudden awkward change of subject? Have you noticed how quickly a discussion gets shut down when it moves past surface-level chatter? That's not an accident. It's a defense mechanism. When people encounter a mind that operates differently, their own mind can go into a state of self-preservation. Curiosity is replaced with resistance. Engagement is replaced with dismissal. This is why intellectuals, philosophers, and visionaries so often feel like outsiders. It's not that they want to be alone. It's that society, in a quiet act of self-defense, pushes them away. It's fascinating. Studies have shown that in social settings, confidence is often valued far more than competence. People are naturally drawn to those who project absolute certainty, even if their ideas are simplistic or wrong. This is why charismatic but shallow thinkers can gain massive followings, while deep, nuanced thinkers often struggle for an audience. History is a graveyard of brilliant minds who couldn't get heard, and a parade of populists and influencers who built empires by telling people exactly what they wanted to hear, rather than challenging them to think. This is the great paradox of intelligence. The more you seek the truth, the more disconnected you can become from the very society you're trying to understand. But this isn't just a feeling or a social theory. There's hard science to back it up.
Imagine you were talking to someone younger, someone who needs advice. The voice needs to be gentle, expressive, and full of understanding. The volume should be moderate and intimate, almost like speaking in confidence. The pace is measured with a steady rhythm. When sharing the lesson, the voice should have a hint of reflection, but also be full of hope and positivity. Emphasize comfort and encouragement. Modern neuroscience has shown that when people feel intellectually outmatched, their brain's amygdala, the ancient primal region responsible for fear and threat detection, lights up. Let that sink in. Deep thinking isn't just intimidating to some, it can trigger a genuine primal survival response, the same one our ancestors felt when facing a predator in the wild. But why would intelligence activate the same fear circuits as physical threat? The answer is evolutionary. For most of human history, our survival didn't depend on being the smartest individual. It depended on being accepted by the tribe. Social harmony was safety. Being rejected or passed out from the group was a death sentence. Our brains are therefore wired for social acceptance far more than for intellectual pursuit. When a highly intelligent person enters a group, they can unknowingly disrupt that tribal balance. Their perspective challenges existing norms and group dynamics. This triggers the brain's ancient defense system, treating the deep thinker less like a person with a new idea and more like a threat to the tribe's stability. This is why so many deep thinkers feel isolated. It's not a lack of social skills on their part. It's that their very nature makes them stand out in a world that, on a biological level, values fitting in. A 2021 study from Stanford University uncovered something even more specific. They found that this rejection is context-dependent. In a one-on-one conversation, people feel far less threatened by an intellectual. But in a group, that threat response skyrockets. Why? Because in a group, social status is everything. People aren't just reacting to the intelligence itself, they're reacting to how it makes them look in front of others. If someone feels outshined, their instinct is to undermine or exclude the source of that feeling, to protect their own standing. On top of all this, psychologists have identified several cognitive biases that act like a firewall against deep thought. There's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with low ability tend to overestimate their intelligence, leading them to arrogantly dismiss ideas they don't understand. There's the status quo bias, our brain's natural preference for familiar ideas over new, complex truths. And then there's the backfire effect, where confronting people with facts that contradict their beliefs doesn't change their mind. It actually makes them double down on being wrong. And now, in our digital age, this rejection of intelligence has been put on steroids. Social media algorithms are not designed for depth.
They are designed for engagement. Controversial, emotionally charged, and simplistic content spreads like wildfire, while thoughtful, nuanced arguments die in the dark. Viral content is, by its nature, shallow. It has to be simple to be shared. The more intellectual you are, the harder it is to compress a universe of thought into a 15-second video or a 280-character tweet. Society is increasingly rewarding entertainment over enlightenment. We've built a world where deep thinkers are not just socially isolated, but algorithmically silenced. So what does this all mean? It means the rejection you might feel isn't personal. It's biological, it's psychological, and it's cultural. It's a system of forces, ancient and modern, all working against the very act of deep thought. But if society resists intelligence, what does it embrace instead? Comfort, predictability, a world where the truth is less important than feeling safe. This brings us back to Schopenhauer, who believed this clash was inevitable. He saw intelligence not as a tool for success, but as a burden that reveals a painful truth about the world. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most famously pessimistic but honest philosophers, didn't just think intelligence was a social inconvenience. He believed it was a fundamental curse. Unlike his peers, who saw reason as the key to a good life, Schopenhauer argued that the smarter you are, the more you are doomed to suffer. But why? What makes intelligence such a heavy burden? His entire philosophy was built on a single powerful concept he called the will. Think of it as a blind, irrational, ceaseless force that drives all of life. According to Schopenhauer, most people are completely controlled by what he called the will to live. This is our basic instinctual drive to survive, to seek pleasure, to find comfort, and to reproduce. It's about feeling good right now. But highly intelligent people, he argued, operate differently. Through their intellect, they develop a competing force, the will to truth. This is an insatiable, often painful desire to understand reality as it actually is, not as we wish it were. And right there, you have the fundamental split. The average person seeks pleasure and avoids pain. The deep thinker seeks truth. Even that truth leads directly to pain and isolation. This creates a disconnect so profound that it makes genuine connection almost impossible. Schopenhauer believed that the more a person understands the raw mechanics of human nature, the harder it becomes for them to participate in normal society. Why?
First, they see through the lies. Most social interactions are built on a delicate foundation of small talk, status games, and polite dishonesty. We pretend to be interested when we're bored. We flatter people to get what we want. We build our identities around fragile egos. The deep thinker sees this not as a harmless social dance, but as a meaningless charade. They value raw truth over comforting appearances, and they often struggle to fake it. They crave depth, but society runs on simplicity. This makes everyday conversations feel like a chore, leaving them feeling bored, disconnected, or inauthentic. Second, they recognize the futility of human desire. Schopenhauer saw the endless chase for money, power, and fame as an illusion, a hamster wheel of desire that never leads to lasting happiness. He believed that most people spend their lives chasing things they think will make them happy, only to find that once they get them, they just want something else. The deep thinker often sees this cycle for what it is. This can make them seem distant or indifferent to the very things that excite and motivate the majority of people. It's hard to get excited about climbing the corporate ladder when you see the ladder as a meaningless construct. This is why intelligent people so often feel misunderstood or alienated. Their very presence is a quiet judgment on the values and beliefs of those around them. They force people to confront uncomfortable truths about their own lives, and most people would rather shoot the messenger than hear the message. Schopenhauer compared a high intellect to a heightened sense of awareness, a gift that feels more like a curse. He famously wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." His reasoning was chillingly simple. The more you understand, the less you can ignore. The more aware you are of the world's flaws, the suffering, the injustice, the harder it is to find simple happiness in it. For Schopenhauer, happiness and intelligence were opposites. He believed that ignorance, not wisdom, was the true key to a contented life. This is why so many of history's greatest minds, Nietzsche, Pascal, Kafka, were plagued by depression, existential dread, and profound loneliness. They saw too much. But Schopenhauer wasn't just a prophet of doom. He also offered a strategy for survival. He believed that while intelligence leads to isolation, there are ways for deep thinkers to cope. First, embrace solitude. He saw solitude not as a punishment, but as a privilege. It is in solitude, away from the noise and judgment of the crowd, that a deep thinker is truly free. He advised them to use their alone time for intellectual and creative pursuits, finding fulfillment within their own minds rather than seeking it from a society that would never understand them. Second, find the others. Instead of desperately trying to fit into the mainstream, Schopenhauer advised intelligent people to seek out the tiny minority who think like them, whether in person or through the works of other great minds in books and philosophy. You don't need everyone to understand you. You just need a few who do. And third, engage with the world wisely. He warned against blindly casting your pearls of wisdom before people who aren't ready for them. Instead, he suggested that thinkers should become quiet observers of society, learning its patterns and choosing when and where to share their insights with surgical precision. Schopenhauer's philosophy is a powerful guide for any modern deep thinker struggling with rejection. It confirms what many of us feel in our bones. Society doesn't fear intelligence itself. It fears what intelligence reveals. Deep thinkers aren't rejected because they are wrong. They are often rejected because they are right, far too soon. So if you've ever felt alone in your thoughts, know this: you are not broken. You are simply seeing the world with the clarity that others can't handle. But does this mean deep thinkers are just doomed to a life of quiet isolation? Or are there larger forces at play, systems designed to keep us all thinking on the surface? The truth is, society isn't accidentally hostile to deep thought. In many ways, it's deliberately built to suppress it. Most people prefer comfort over truth, and our entire social structure is designed to maintain that comfort.
But why is comfort so much more important than intellectual growth? Why do we resist change, even when it leads to progress? The answer lies in the very wiring of our brains and the institutions that have shaped our minds since birth. At its core, the human brain is a machine that craves certainty. Evolution programmed us to conserve mental energy, a phenomenon psychologists call cognitive ease. Our brain prefers simple, familiar information because it's easy to process. When an idea is complex, nuanced, or challenges what we already believe, the brain flags it as difficult and potentially dangerous. It's a mental shortcut that keeps us safe, but also keeps us shallow. This is reinforced by something called system justification theory, which explains why people will defend the existing social order even when it's actively harming them. Questioning authority, or challenging outdated beliefs creates uncertainty, and the brain would rather rationalize a broken system than face the discomfort of changing it. Add to that the power of groupthink, our deep-seated fear of social rejection, which makes us conform to popular beliefs rather than risk being cast out for thinking differently. This psychological preference for comfort is why intellectuals and visionaries have always struggled. But today, it's been weaponized by the digital world. Who gets the most attention online? Not the scholars, but the influencers who can distill complex reality into a viral, feel-good soundbite. Deep, thoughtful discussions can't compete because they take time and mental energy, while viral content is instant, emotional, and easy. The algorithms reward engagement, and nothing engages us more than outrage, humor, or controversy, all of which thrive in the absence of rational intellectual thought. This rejection of deep thinking doesn't just happen online. It starts in the very institutions that are supposed to shape our minds. Our education system, for all its talk about critical thinking, largely rewards obedience and memorization. Students who can regurgitate information are called bright, while those who question the curriculum are often labeled disruptive. The corporate world is no different. It doesn't promote the most innovative employees. It promotes those who fit the culture and don't rock the boat. And in politics, leaders who speak with logical nuance often lose to those who simply tell people comforting stories they want to believe. This is why the most celebrated thinkers in history were almost always outcasts in their own time. Society claims to love innovation and intelligence, but in reality, it only celebrates them once they're safely in the past and no longer a threat. Galileo was imprisoned for his discoveries, but today we build statues of him. Van Gogh died broke, but now his paintings are priceless. Nikola Tesla envisioned a world of free energy, but died in obscurity while others got rich from his ideas. Society doesn't embrace the disruptive genius in the present, it only honors them in hindsight. So if you're a deep thinker struggling to be accepted, what can you actually do? If you've ever felt misunderstood for thinking deeply, you need to realize you are in extraordinary company. Throughout history, the minds that have shaped our world were not celebrated in their own time. They were ridiculed, persecuted, and ignored. Their ideas were seen as dangerous, disruptive, or just too strange for the average person to comprehend. These thinkers had one thing in common. They were ahead of their time, and for that, they paid a heavy price. Consider Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. He didn't write books or build monuments, he just walked around Athens and asked questions. He challenged people to stop living on autopilot, to examine their own beliefs, and to use logic over blind tradition. But for the authorities, this was the most dangerous act of all. He was put on trial, not really for corrupting the youth, but for the ultimate crime, encouraging people to think for themselves. Given the choice to escape, he chose to drink poison rather than abandon his principles, leaving us with the immortal words, "The unexamined life is not worth living." His death was a message that society has sent again and again. We fear those who challenge what we believe. Centuries later, Galileo Galilei committed a similar crime. He discovered the truth. When he used his telescope to prove the Earth revolved around the sun, he didn't just correct an astronomical error, he shattered centuries of religious dogma. The Church, whose power was built on being the sole source of knowledge, branded him a heretic. He was forced, under threat of torture, to publicly deny the truth he had seen with his own eyes. For the rest of his life, he lived under house arrest, a prisoner in his own home. Galileo's story proves that even the most undeniable facts will be rejected if they threaten an established power structure.
Then there was Friedrich Nietzsche.
A mind so radical his work was considered a form of madness. He argued that our entire system of morality was a comforting lie, that society was built to favor the weak, and that true strength came from creating your own values. At the time, these ideas were too unsettling, too explosive for people to handle. He was dismissed as insane, his works largely ignored. Yet today, his ideas on power and morality are essential reading in philosophy, psychology, and art, proving that society often rejects a thinker in the present only to build monuments to them in the future. Think of Nikola Tesla, a visionary who dreamed of free, wireless energy for the entire world. But society, and more specifically the powerful men who profited from the old way of doing things, saw his ideas not as a gift, but as a threat. Industrialists like Thomas Edison and J.P. Morgan actively worked to shut him down. Despite his genius, Tesla died alone and broke in a hotel room, while others built fortunes on his stolen ideas. His life is a heartbreaking lesson in how society often rewards shrewd marketers over true visionaries. Or consider Alan Turing, the man who cracked the Nazi Enigma code, effectively ending World War II and saving millions of lives. His theories on computation became the bedrock of modern artificial intelligence. He was, without exaggeration, one of the most important figures of the 20th century. Yet instead of being honored as a hero, he was persecuted by the society he helped save. In 1952, he was chemically castrated for being gay, a punishment so barbaric it led to his tragic suicide at just 41. What is the pattern here? What connects all of these brilliant, tragic lives? Each of them introduced ideas that were too advanced for their time. They were rejected, ridiculed, and punished while they were alive, only for their ideas to later become the foundation of human progress. The lesson is clear. Society doesn't fear intelligence. It fears what intelligence represents: change. So, that brings us to the most important question. If history proves that society pushes back against deep thinkers, what can you do? Are you doomed to a life of loneliness and misunderstanding? Not at all. It just means you need a different strategy. You need to learn how to navigate the world wisely. First, learn to read the room. Not every person or every situation is ready for a deep conversation. A seed can only grow in fertile soil. Save your most profound thoughts for the people and places that can truly appreciate them. Forcing depth where it isn't welcome will only lead to frustration for you and resentment from them. Second, seek out your tribe. You do not need millions of people to understand you. You just need the right ones. In the modern world, your tribe might not be next door. They might be in books, in online communities, or in small intellectual circles. Find the others who think like you. The greatest minds in history often found their solace not in the crowds, but in conversation with the few who could keep up. Third, learn to be a translator. Albert Einstein famously said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." This is a crucial skill for any deep thinker. Learn how to build a bridge from your complex ideas to the understanding of others. This isn't about dumbing it down. It's about finding the essential core of your thoughts and communicating them with clarity and elegance. Schopenhauer once said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." Deep thinkers see the world differently. You see the targets that are invisible to most. And yes,
That will always make some people uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean you should stop seeing them. It doesn't mean you should stop thinking. Society needs deep thinkers. It just doesn't always know it. So if you have ever felt like an outsider for the thoughts in your head, remember this: you are not alone. You are part of a long, noble tradition of minds who saw the world for what it was, not just what people wanted it to be. And while society may fear deep thinkers, it is the deep thinkers who, time and time again, are the ones who push humanity forward. If this video resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt rejected for thinking too deeply? Let's start a real conversation. And if you want to explore more insights from history's greatest and most misunderstood minds, hit that subscribe button. We are just getting started.